Okay, so this week we're going to work on highlighting the two chairs and the table. And I just mixed sap green and phthalo blue with white to get the color of the metal pipe here and the windows. So I like this kind of bluish greenish color in here. It's not the same as the sap green that we have for the foliage. So it's a combination of sap green, phthalo blue, and white. We could put a bit of, for the dark, I would put a bit of raw umber in there. But this is not for now. This is for after, when we finish working on these two and the table. So for the table and the chairs, I'm going to use burnt umber, yellow ochre, and white. And we'll take it from there. We'll see what we need to add more. But I think I would like to keep it, I prefer to keep it simple. So let's take yellow ochre. Burnt umber is for the dark. But let's see first. We'll use just yellow ochre and see how it goes. I'm using a round brush. And let's take a part of the chair that is highlighted. And you know, when I was drawing these chairs, I simplified them. So we're going to keep them simplified. We're not going to do too many details in there. So I'm just going to do this instead of having two parts of it. So I'll show you. This is how it looks. It has a gap in between the cane. I'm going to connect these together. Just easier to paint. And then I can, with this, still add some highlights and some darks. So I'm looking where I see highlights, strong highlights. Not strong, mid-tone, let's say. I would say mid-tone because we need to highlight more. And I'm going to go down, so kind of it will dry darker. Now you see I didn't go all the way down because this turns. So at this point, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber. Don't clean your brush. Just add the burnt umber to your yellow ochre. And then add the color here. I'm simplifying all of these colors that I'm seeing in there. There. Bottom part, I like that the chair is dark at the bottom, right here. And I'm going to take again a bit of burnt umber and yellow ochre. Darken this part. So I'm just looking at my reference to see where the darks and lights are. If I go too dark, if you go too dark, just add yellow ochre and soften this. Okay, good. All right, let's do that. you'll see in a minute, we're going to add stronger highlights. Chair is kind of darker at the bottom here. So I'm mixing at this point a little bit of burnt umber and yellow ochre. Chair turns around. When it turns around, you'll see there's more light on the chair. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So I'm still using burnt umber and yellow ochre at this point. And I'm simplifying what I'm seeing. And then again, this is quite nice in here, so we're good. Some of the dark that we added last time looks perfect. I'm gonna highlight a little bit in here, not much. And I'm going to leave the part where the table is casting a shadow on the chair. Keep it with no highlight. A bit more of the burnt umber. Kind of, I want the table to show that it's casting a shadow on the chair, but at the same time, I don't want it to be harsh, strong. It just needs to look like it's there, but it's not cutting the chair, the top of the chair. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a bit of the combination of burnt umber and yellow ochre, and I am softening the edges of this shadow. Okay, so this is not the focal point, it's just a nice feature, detail. Okay, so now I'm gonna I'll do this part and then I'll stop. I'll pause so you can catch up. Now I'm taking yellow ochre and white. You know, you have to be careful with yellow ochre and white, because if you put too much white in yellow ochre, it becomes it loses the yellowish color. It becomes faded. So I'm gonna put a highlight there, and I'm gonna put one right here that goes down. And another one maybe here. Again, let's highlight, but with more yellow ochre, this part. softening in between the strong highlight and the chair, the rest of the chair, with yellow ochre and a little bit of burnt umber. Again, let's take yellow ochre, put a tiny bit of burnt umber in it, and highlight this bottom part. I'm simplifying what I'm seeing in there. Okay, so this is the front of the chair. Front of the chair is going to get a little bit more light. Clean my brush, wipe it, and pick up some of this paint to adjust the line. It's all about values here. Light, dark. This part is lighter right here, a little bit lighter right there, because it turns. The chair, the wood turns. It catches more light. It's in the front. Again, I'm going to take a little bit more of the yellow ochre. I'm going to pause. This is too much detail in one. So I'm going to pause for a minute so you can catch up, and then we'll continue. Okay, so now let's continue highlighting this chair using, again, yellow ochre and burnt umber. And I'm just going to give this part a little bit of a, not a strong highlight, medium tone, and this part here. All right. Over here as well. And I can see that it stops in the reference, and we have here a little bit more, kind of a stronger highlight in here. And also, if I find that my highlight is too strong, I can glaze it later on. So now I'm adding a little bit more of a stronger highlight. in certain areas. Let's do a bit more here. Okay, I think we're good. Now I'm going to highlight the top a bit. So I'm going to take burnt umber and white. I take white slowly, like with the tip of my brush. White is strong. And I'm going to do a, highlight it a bit more because this is going to dry darker. All right, I'm going to highlight a bit more, but I'm going to dab my highlights with the tip of my brush just to give it a look of cane, some texture. And leave it at that for now.
So that was burnt umber and white, you said?
Yeah, just burnt umber and white. Now I'm going to go to the other chair sitting next to the window. Same idea. Yellow ochre. This chair doesn't have as much highlight as the other one. So what we're going to do is the same idea. We're going to take yellow ochre first, and we're going to highlight the top. All the way down. Not all the way down, actually. Let's highlight this part a little bit more. It's going to dry darker. This gentle way or careful way of highlighting will give us a good idea if we need more or if we need to change the highlight on the chair. So not everything I'm seeing right now on the reference is right. So I'm going to try to use my common sense here. Sometimes you look at the reference and you say, no, I don't think this is right. So anyway, I'll just highlight it carefully, slowly. I know in the reference you see that this chair on the right, the one I'm highlighting right now, looks a bit different than the one on the left. We don't have to do exactly the same. We can change. Okay, I'm going to take now yellow ochre, and I'm going to highlight this part gently, slowly, and I'm going to let it take now burnt umber and just kind of blend. Good. Let's go. Continue. Yellow ochre, a bit of... Now the bottom part is darker. Okay, so I don't want too much highlight. And if I don't want too much highlight, then I will add burnt umber to my yellow ochre. And again, if I feel by the time I'm done, I have too much highlight, that's okay. I can always glaze it. Now the top of the chair is highlighted. So I'm going to take burnt umber and white. And I'm going to go in and just give it textured kind of. Look. There we go. Clean my brush. Take yellow ochre and burnt umber and quite a bit of white. And then come here and give this part a bit of more highlight. Now, let's bring in yellow ochre into this strong white and highlight this part, this part. Okay. All right, I'm going to pause. Okay, so now at this point, I'm going to take my yellow, burnt umber, just burnt umber. Put some water in it, make it kind of transparent. Go in and glaze some parts that are really dark. It gives the chair a bit of that nice warm color. Now we lost a bit of that color when we were highlighting. I just wipe the excess with my finger. And this one too. Just it almost disappears in the back here because it's in a really dark area and their corner is dark. So I'm just glazing the parts that are darker with burnt umber, only burnt umber. and umber. And I'm gonna glaze this one here with burnt umber as well. This highlight. See, that's what glazing does now. It's still there, but it toned down. I toned it down, but I can still see it. Okay. That's good. All right, I'll come back and we can start the table. Okay, so now the table. Let's work on this part. I'm gonna stay with my round brush and I'm gonna try to see if I can get this going. By the way, while I wasn't recording, I used some of the phthalo blue with burnt umber and I made it into a glaze right there, so you can see the dark right here. So that's burnt umber, phthalo blue, and water. And I darkened around the chair down here a bit. So you see it's darker now. There used to be here a bit of light green. So I darkened that, all of that, glazing it back. Glaze. Not a heavy, it's just transparent color. Transparent paint. Now, I'm going to take yellow ochre. And again, I'm just going to highlight mid-tone. So yellow ochre, and I'm going to put some burnt umber in here because I don't want to start with a strong highlight. Then I can add the strong highlight after, or I can glaze the shadow like I did here.
Sorry, what was that color? Sorry.
It was burnt umber and yellow ochre.
Okay.
So you can see I'm highlighting slowly. It might look really strong right now, but it's not a very strong highlight. There's no white in here. It's only yellow ochre and burnt umber. Round brush. This is where we're going to see more and more of the shape of the table because we're highlighting. So now at this point, I'm going to take a little bit of white, put it in the same mixture of burnt umber and yellow ochre. And I'm just going to come here and then give this edge of the table a little bit of a highlight right here. I'm going to darken at this point with burnt umber, and I'm going to come here. Again, yellow ochre, more burnt umber in the yellow ochre. Wet my paint, my brush. Sorry, wet my brush. Get some yellow ochre and burnt umber, and try to highlight this part. Now I did change the shape of the table at the bottom, so I'm going to improvise a bit. I'm going to use the same light that I'm seeing in the reference, but not the same shape of the bottom part of the base. Let's take a bit more yellow ochre into this burnt umber. Take burnt umber at this point and just try to blend this part so it doesn't look like it's cut off completely. Again, yellow ochre and burnt umber. So you see what I'm doing is I'm highlighting slowly. And I have to be careful not to go over the same paint many times because it's still wet and I can see it's lifting. It's right there. It's lifting. The paint is lifting. That's okay. Now let it be. I'm going to let it dry, and I'm going to take a little bit of yellow ochre and burnt umber again, and I'm going to come here and give it a little bit of a highlight. And another one. And now let's do the front part of the legs. This is again yellow ochre and burnt umber. Let's take a little bit more burnt umber in here with the yellow ochre, and then just kind of highlight this part a little bit. So in a minute I'll show you what I mean, and you will see that part of the leg is going to be highlighted more than the other. I just want to blend this part together so it looks heavy enough. And now I'm going to take a little bit of white, put it in here with yellow ochre and white and burnt umber. And I'm going to highlight again this part and this part. And I'll wait for it to dry to see if I need to go darker, lighter. Do I need to highlight other parts as well. So we'll see. It looks to me like I might need to darken some areas, but for now I'm going to let it dry. And I'm going to go back to burnt umber and a bit of yellow ochre, and I'm going to do the highlight a little bit the back legs. Right there. So this for me looks too strong right there. So I'm going to take more burnt umber. And gently make this part darker, a little bit darker. And here too. At least here underneath the table, and then when it comes out, it's going to have a little bit more of a highlight. But again, I'm going to let it dry and see how it goes. If I need to put more highlights or darks, then I will decide at that point. Okay, I might be able to highlight a little bit more now. This part. Yeah. Okay. All right. We can highlight the tabletop. I'm going to take white, put it in my yellow ochre here. This yellow ochre has a bit of burnt umber, which is good, but I'm going to bring in a bit more yellow ochre. Dip my brush in water, the tip of my brush in water, because I want to glaze this color. I don't want it to be heavy. That's why I'm dipping my brush in water. Actually, I'll do this too. And let's see if we can create a line. That looks like light in there. It might look funny, but it might look okay. So we'll see how it goes. Again. So what I did is I actually made my color, my paint a little bit lighter, thinner. Sorry, thinner. Touch of white, more white, with the tip of my brush. And I'm going to highlight this part. This is what's nice about this kind of painting, is that you add your highlights slowly. And the more white you put, the less brush stroke. Otherwise, it will look exactly the same everywhere. Right, so I can see that this extra highlight I'm putting in here, although they are a bit of a couple of brush strokes. They're making a difference. I'm really not trying to, do exactly the same thing I'm seeing in there, but just I'm trying to give it a little bit of a nice touch in terms of highlights. We are going to be putting the mugs, cups, whatever is in there eventually, and then we'll put the shadow of these cups or mugs. I'm adding yellow ochre in here. All right, let's adjust a tiny bit this part. Okay, that's better. A little bit more highlight in here. I'm going to let it dry, and if I want to add more shadows on the table, dark, then I'm going to let it dry, and then I'll glaze the shadow on top. So I'll take burnt umber, just burnt umber, and water. Wipe my brush, and then glaze the top. I'll try to glaze it right now. I like this reddish color that the wood has, and I don't want to lose it completely. Yeah, it's good. I just glazed the table, and I gave it a bit of a red color using just burnt umber. I did exactly what I have done with the chairs. I glaze them after. So sometimes the reason I glaze is sometimes when I add white to a color, the color fades. It becomes kind of flat, and maybe then at that point I would lose the beautiful depth and color by adding white. I lose that brilliant color, the beautiful shape, or not shape, sorry, the beautiful depth or intensity, I should say, intensity of this color by using white. So what I do is I glaze it back on. Once it's dry, all I have to do is just put a thin layer of a pure color that's not mixed with any other color, and then just glaze it on, and then I can bring it back. I bring back the intensity of that color. Okay, this is dry here now. So I'm going to darken it a bit on this, on one side. I'm just going to use just burnt umber. And that will give it back. It will make it a little bit darker. And it will give the table some shape. This color is saturated right now. It's not, it's just kind of, just the way it is. You see a bit of red in here because it's just brown. It's brown, but it's it has no other color. And it's a glaze of burnt umber. All right, one more. Good. That's it. All right, for the mugs, I'm going to take burnt umber and Payne's Gray and white. So burnt umber, Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray will give burnt umber a tiny bit of grayish color. And the reason I'm using burnt umber is just I want to keep it warm. I want to keep my color warm. I don't want it to look too blue or gray, but at the same time different than the brown of the table. So this is a good color. I'm using medium tone and I'm going to highlight slowly. Now I'm going to take more white. Try to see if I can get the handle on this one from this side. It might work, it might not work, we'll see. And then I'm going to highlight a bit. Start highlighting slowly. Light is coming from the right, so slowly.
Could you zoom in on that?
Sure. All right, so we zoomed in. I'm going to take now, again, the mid-tone highlight. I'm glad the handle is drying darker because I don't want it to be too light. Okay, let's do this one. This is easier because the handle is out. And you can see now there's a kind of dark line in here and here. So I'm gonna, in a minute, I'm gonna go back and soften this transition of from light to dark. Clean my brush. Go back to this part, which was the dark part, the one I started with. Put another layer and slowly blend it. And now again, because it's still wet, I can go back to the highlight part and try to blend. Blend. Soft blending. Okay, so where the handle is, I'm taking more white. I'm going to highlight this part a bit. And this part. Again, a little bit more white inside of the mug. My brush is dry, so I just dip the tip of my brush in water and pick up some more color. Paint. I'm going to take more white. Try to give this part a little bit more highlight. Okay, this is enough. I'm going to take brown, which is burnt umber, what we're using. Make it into a glaze. Just glaze the bottom part where the mugs are sitting. Create a shadow of the mugs on the table. Again, glaze the bottom part and just push this shadow to the left. That's good enough. Okay, so for this week we did the chairs, the table, and the mugs.